Welcome to another video from cardboardeast.com. My name's Jay. I play Asian board games and share what I find with all of you. Today we're going to talk about the best games from 2016. 2016 was a pretty amazing year from board games. If you just look at these games around me, there's some of the games that we still play today. People still talk about Rebellion. People still love Terraforming Mars. People play Scythe all the time. Pandemic Iberia, Pandemic Cthulhu, Arkham Horror LCG is still played, widely played today. 2016 was only 5 years ago, and it seems like a long time. Often, 5 years is enough to make a game ancient in our hobby. But these are the games from the West, and I'm curious if board games from the West were doing so well. What was going on in Asia at that time? So today we're going to talk about the top 10 board games from Asia, 2016. Before we get started, I want to talk about Insider from Oink Games. If I had made this list 5 years ago, I probably would put this game on the list. However, it's no longer on the list. And let me explain why really quickly. If you never played Insider, it's basically just 20 questions. The twist is that one of the people in the group, besides the person answering the questions, also knows the answer. And their goal is to try and guide everyone there to the right answer within a certain time limit. But the problem is that if they make themselves too obvious, then they can lose the game. Now, if this is sounding familiar to you, it's probably because, well, Werewords came along and I think kind of was a better game. I think Werewords is great because some of the rules in Insider were a little bit fiddly. So did you guess right? Now you have to guess an identity. Who guessed the identity? And it became a big weird mess. And in Werewords, the app just takes care of it for you. In fact, when I play the game, I just tell people, no, we're just going to play, and you just do what the app says. And it's pretty smooth from there. So I think that this has kind of been replaced by Werewords. But I still want to mention that Insider is a fantastic game, and if you don't want an app-assisted game like Werewords, then you can go ahead and get Insider. In fact, there's Insider Black Edition, which is cool and has more cards in it. Number 10 is Dice Fishing, Roll and Catch. Dice Fishing came out in 2016 by a Japanese publisher known as March Hare Games. This edition that I have is from 2018, and that's done by Homo Sapiens Lab, which is a Taiwanese publisher. And you'll find that's an ongoing trend as we go on. Dice Fishing plays from 2 to 5 people, and I wouldn't really play with 2, but it's this excellent party game. It's basically gambling for kids. Essentially, there'll be lots of cards and fish cards that you get with numbers on them, and you'll have to roll dice to get that number or higher. And each player will have a D6, D8, a D10, a D20, and you can use your D6s every turn, but you can only use your other Ds, and you can use your non-D6 dice every other turn. Your D6 dice also have special abilities like making numbers go up or down or roll certain dice a certain way, and what you get is this great energy that just surrounds the table and everyone who plays this game. Now, it is a party game, and it suffers from the problem that I guess Dixit does, where the scoring is a little bit wonky. So you can get to a point where there's no way that you can possibly win because someone catches just way too many fish. And the cards can be a bit bland, but all the dice are super bright and colorful. In fact, the amount that I paid for this, the dice more than make up the value. So if you're looking for a nice filler to end the night, or a nice game to take to a bar while you're drinking with friends, I think Dice Fishing, Roll and Catch is a great game. Number 9, Songbirds. I really like Songbirds. It is, to me, like one of the perfect examples of a nice small box card game. This was published in 2016 by Kuchiya, and I believe this Japanese publisher didn't really do anything else. But 1 year later in 2017, Homo Sapien Labs, yet again, took over the license and began publishing it internationally and here in Taiwan. And this is the copy that I'll be talking about today. Songbirds plays from 1 to 4, although I really wouldn't play it solo games. And it being a tiny small box game, it does feel samey after a while that you play it. But every time I have played this game, everybody comments on the art and how the birds are ridiculously cute. And one of the things I love about Songbirds is that I can finish teaching the game before I finish setup. Like, it's just pretty easy. Here's everyone's hands of cards, and someone plays a card, and you have to play a card adjacent to another card that was already played. And that's pretty much it. You do a nice little area control with your grid, and then you score points. Pretty easy. Now, some people say it's a little bit random because you can't control what cards you get, and you can't control like what spots are available to you, but I've played this against a friend of mine, Jerry, from Taiwan Board Game Design. It's his favorite game, and it was not pretty. It was pretty brutal. He utterly destroyed me. It's a very simple design, but there are some really thinky decisions there, and it has that nice Reineke aha moment where you realize, oh, that's how I should be playing the game. And then before you know it, Jerry's laughing as he scored multiple points than you, and everyone's mocking you. Thanks, Jerry. Number 8, Master of Respect. I absolutely adore this game. This is not the 2016 release. In fact, I've never even played that. This is the 2018 Hobby Japan edition, and this is the one that will be much easier to find. In Master of Respect, you are one of the 5 masters. You'll have 3 students, you can gain more, and you'll be assigning each student a special action. The actions are hidden and double-sided, so you do have to be careful when you flip them over that you flip them in the right orientation. Now, your actions can do multiple things. You can gain more students, you can upgrade your students, you can get more resources, you can give and take other people respect, you can follow other people's actions by giving them points. And you're going to have to do that because this game is lightning fast. 5 rounds with 5 players and still plays in under an hour. And I was really surprised by how much game there was in that short time frame. Now, there is a little bit of trade back. Because the game is so short, you kind of have to commit to an early strategy that may not be so optimal for you. But with the more actions that you get and the more students that you get, there's more flexibility for you in the upcoming rounds. What I love about Master of Respect is that there is a ton of variety in the game. Not only are there tons of extra students that you can get, there are 5 masters. Each of them plays differently. And there's a lot of game in here to explore. I don't know many games like that. You also have to use the back as part of the game for the round counter. I mean, you don't have to use it. There's another piece of paper. But Master of Respect is a very unique game. And if you love engine builders and you like games that play under an hour, then you owe it to yourself to get Master of Respect. Number 7, Tokyo Highway. This is not the 2016 version. 2016 was a 2-player only version. 2018, it was picked up by Asmodee, and they made it 2 to 4 players. And they also released a cute little expansion. I don't know what else to say about Tokyo Highway that hasn't been said before, but if you don't know what this game is, let me tell you that the cover of this box does absolutely zero justice to the game. Now, if you've never heard of Tokyo Highway, I highly recommend you look up photos of it because it is utterly bizarre looking. If you don't know this publisher, It's in Games is known for making games that look more like interactive art than your typical traditional board game. And Tokyo Highway was the brick that built the house that it's in. Tokyo Highway has probably more table presence than any other game on this list. While the rulebook is quite intense looking, it's by far the most approachable game on here. And by far the most unique. Some people who have sausage fingers, like me, do have some trouble with this game, especially towards the end game, where the highways are crossing all over each other. Typically what happens is that one person knocks down the entire highway, and the rules say you have to rebuild it, but I think you can just end the game right then and there. The mini little expansion adds more buildings that can block your way, and also gives you more personality with your cars. I think the original game just gave you regular small cars, and this one gives you some semi-trucks, buses, vans, just a little bit more variety. And it doesn't sound like that should be much, but it really changes the aesthetic of the game. And that's been my number 7, Tokyo Highway. Number 6, Far East War 1592. Yes, Asian publishers do make war games, and this one is amazing. In 1592, Japan had unified under Toyotomi, and they had nothing else to do, and so they decided to invade China. They asked Korea, like, hey, can we come here? And Korea's like, no, you can't walk through here. And then began Far East War. This is actually a team game. You can play 2v2, but really I think it's just a two-player game. One side Japan, one side Korea and China. My favorite part about this game is that instead of making it this big convoluted war game, and I love those, they decided to make it a rondel system. So instead of all these complicated phases, it's just a rondel that simplifies everything. And it makes you focus on which of the 6 actions you're going to take. And this makes the game incredibly approachable. Also, each side has more than 10 different generals to choose from. So every time you play the game, it'll feel a little bit different depending on which generals you choose. And each general gives you a unique superpower. Even the combat itself is really approachable. You roll dice similar to the Command & Colors system, and whatever you see, you hit. The few negatives that I have for it is that it can be a little bit of a slog. It's really hard to advance and hold that advance. However, other generals have their special powers. You're able to do some crazy flanking at times and win the game in a big final movement. However, that usually isn't the case, and the game kind of stays a little bit longer than I think it should. But that doesn't mean that it's not a fantastic, approachable war game with a theme that's rarely talked about or touched on. So if you're looking for a nice, approachable war game with a great amount of replay value, I can't recommend Far East War 1592 enough. Number 5, Guns and Steel Renaissance by Mo Ideas Game Design. Guns and Steel Renaissance and its predecessor Guns and Steel was designed by Jesse Lee, and he's commonly known as one of the bigger designers here in Taiwan. You might have played probably his most popular game is Ponzi Scheme, or you might have heard of Flow of History. This is very similar to Flow of History because they're both Civilization card games, but for my money, I think Guns and Steel Renaissance is by far the better game. Now, some people will say that if I have 7 Wonders Duel, what's the point of me playing this game? Because essentially, you're doing the same thing. You're drafting cards from a pyramid and obtaining wonders. But Guns and Steel Renaissance does something that I just love about small box Asian games, and that it just punches above its weight class. Like, this is just a deck of cards and a few tokens, but you get some good meatiness to this game and a good amount of replay value with all the combos that you could discover. And the gameplay is quite simple. You place a card face down, play a card face up, you buy something, and you do some cleanup. Pretty easy. Renaissance adds these culture tokens, which gives another endgame trigger to the game, and it prevents other players from stealing your wonders, which was a little bit controversial in the first game. Now, 7 Wonders Duel is a very chill game. You can just have that with a glass of wine and just relax and work on it and put a little bit of military, and you don't have to worry about anything. Guns and Steel Renaissance is just rock and roll, and it's punching you in the face. Like, there are a lot of cool decisions to make, and you have to pay attention to what your opponents are doing and not let them get away with a wonder or let them attack you. Sure, there's a little bit of a take that with the military, but you will see it coming a mile away. When you see your opponents buying these military cards and you haven't, you know you're in trouble, and it's kind of your own fault. But Guns and Steel Renaissance, I think, is a really good example of a small box game that offers more game than you think it should. If you've been a big fan of Guns and Steel, the good news is that Mo Ideas Game Design is coming out with a 3rd version, in which case they will combine the cards from both, and they'll redo some of the math of the cards. So if you're a big fan of Guns and Steel, there's that to look forward to. If not, this game is more than easy to find. Number 4, Wind the Film by Sase Sashi. This is Sase Sashi's 3rd game that they ever made, and I think it's by far one of his best. It is a simple card game that plays 2 to 4, and I think it scales really well from 2 to 4. If I can describe it in a sentence, it feels like Lost Cities, but it's just a lot meaner. Wind the Film is that girl in high school that you loved and had no love for you. There are no good decisions in Wind the Film. They're all bad or worse. So if you can make the fewest terrible decisions, you're going to win this game. It's called Wind the Film because like Bonanza, your hand is kind of stuck and programmed, and you'll just be playing cards from one end of your hand. But it's called Wind the Film because you get to pick a card and reprogram the hand. Now that sounds like a little tiny gimmick, but it makes a huge difference in the game. Wind the Film was a grail game for me for a very long time. And for a very long time, it was very difficult to find. But that all changed this year when Matago Games released Photograph. I'm not sure why they changed the name. Probably because I guess young people today don't know what winding a film is, even if they know what film is. When I was a kid, kids would take photographs like this, and now kids do this. I'm old. If you are a Sashi and Sashi fan, and you have not played this game, then you are in for a huge treat. Sashi and Sashi is a husband and wife design team, where Sashi does the design and his wife, Takako Takarai, I apologize if I said your name wrong, does all the art. And it's hard for me to think of one and not immediately think of the other. And when you get this game, you'll notice that the art from all his other games are in here. So you'll see the cover of Coffee Roaster, you'll see the cover of Take the A Chord, and it just makes this game that much more charming. I really like the theme of the sunset going down and you're going around taking pictures of the city. But I adore this game. It's really easy to teach. There are a few fiddly rules, and I kind of wish it was a little bit smoother, but this is just one of the best Sashi and Sashi games that you could find. Granted, there's only 8 of them, but Wind the Film is a game that'll kick your teeth in, but you'll be coming back for more. Wait a minute. You're looking at this going, number three, not this game. But yeah, Yokohama is my number 3. I think there are 2 other games that are a little bit better than Yokohama. Yokohama Deluxified has been one of my grail games for the longest time. I finally got a copy, and it's destroyed. Yay! Thankfully, all the pieces inside are just fine. I've been a big fan of this game, despite its rough edges. It plays 2 to 4, and I think it scales pretty well, although 4 doesn't play well as much. I think the sweet spot is definitely 2 or 3. Now, if you're one of the few people who have never heard of this game, Yokohama is a fantastic game that kind of took the mechanics from Istanbul and just made them better. It's a worker placement game where on your turn you either place 3 workers in different locations or you place 2 workers on one location. Done. Set in the beginning of the Meiji era, At the beginning of the Meiji era, Yokohama was a tiny little fishing village. By the end, it was a bustling, huge city of commerce, and it still is today. This game is about that transformation. In it, you're dropping your workers all over the town, and you have to snake your president with your workers. And it creates this great, fun, logistical puzzle in the middle of this great worker placement contract fulfillment game. Now, I did mention before that this game does have some rough edges. So, for example, the tech cards are quite strong. If someone gets a tech card that's quite powerful, early on, there's really nothing you can do. And the game takes up a lot of space on the table. It's a table hog, and it's not going to like sharing your table with you. Also, some of the actions that you can take, such as like the church or the customs house, there really is no benefit to go there, but you got to go there for the points. And if you don't go there, you're not going to gain those points. And in Yokohama, there's a lot of flexibility. Sometimes those endgame triggers don't trigger as quickly as you would like, and you're left with all this time and resources to kind of do all these things that you want. But what people love about Yokohama are all the combos that you could trigger. Do that, get this, you can get this, and get that contract, and you can do this and do that. In fact, like usually people scream out Yokohama as if they're screaming Yahtzee. This game is fantastic that way. I really love the balance of long-term and short-term strategy, that you could slowly build up workers in one area through the course of the game and then drop your president there later for a nice, big, powerful turn. And everything is open knowledge. So you get to see exactly what your opponents are doing, and everyone sees what you're doing. And that's one of the reasons why I find myself coming back to this again and again and again. I know my friend must be sad now because I'm not going to be begging him to play his copy, and now I got my own copy. Number 2, Demon Worker. What? Hear me out. One of the things that I didn't like about Yokohama, and I still don't like, is that, well, if someone's doing really, really well, it's really hard to catch up. Whereas Demon Worker, that's really not the case. Demon Worker is only 5 rounds, so unlike Yokohama, you know when it's going to end. In addition, those last few rounds are explosive. So rounds 1 and round 2, it's a little slow. Maybe you score points, maybe probably not. But rounds 4 and 5, you're just exploding with points, sometimes getting over 50 or 60 points. That being said though, unlike Yokohama, which is a little bit loosey-goosey and you kind of do whatever you want, Demon Worker says, no, you're not playing that kind of game today. This game is really tight on your actions and your resources, and it kind of feels like you're in hell, especially at the higher player counts at 4 or 3. Towards those last few rounds, there are so many workers on the board, and every time you go to a workspace, you have to pay all the other workers to food, and it gets incredibly expensive very quickly. But part of that is the charm of Demon Worker. You're here to be efficient and get stuff done. So every game you play, you'll have a different crew of demons at your disposal to hire. And every game that I've played, I'll have different combinations and different combos of demons that I can put out and exploit. It's okay to exploit them, they're demons. The art is super cute and charming. It's very dramatic. There's lots of good combos. The contracts are hilarious. They're not just bland contracts that have no names like Yokohama. Do you want to fulfill a contract, or do you want to freeze the entire planet? Do you want to fulfill another contract or build a giant robot and destroy the earth? That's the charm of Demon Worker. And that's why it's number 2. That's right, Roundhouse is my number 1 for 2016. I like it more than Yokohama, I like it more than Tokyo Highway, I like it more than Demon Worker. Number 1 goes to Roundhouse from Emperor S4 Games. What I love most about Roundhouse is that it's a rondel game that's a double rondel. A rondel within a rondel. Now, we've seen games with multiple rondels, but you rarely see a game that has one circle and it's outside of another circle, and there are layers and your working to go up and down on the outside and then on the inside of the track. Fascinating. Now, the mechanics around the rondel are all pretty simple, like nice little set collection. All the card art looks great, but the worship action is amazing. Sure, you can take your time going around the rondel, picking up resources, putting your people on the chairs, but if your opponent loops around the roundhouse and gets to the worship action, they could score tons of points super fast. I mean, the game does have a lot going on. There's a lot of different little actions and little mini games it almost feels like that you could play. But I find that no different than any Vito Lacerda game that I've ever played. Yeah, that's right. I said that. I have both of the expansions, and both the expansions play great. They're all a whole bunch of different little modules that you can throw in. I tend to throw in a few of them, not all of them. But Roundhouse is something that I think has really stood the test of time, and I think it has only gotten better with age. In an industry and a hobby where the games get more and more complicated and a little bit more convoluted, Roundhouse is here. It's like, here I am. I'm just going in a circle. Super easy, super chill, super relaxing. Some people did complain about the 2-player variant and that it gave you too many resources and took a little bit too much time. I played an official variant where you roll dice to determine the movement of the extra pawns, and it worked absolutely beautifully and fine. Also, that rondel, thickest cardboard I've ever seen in the game. I'm doing this, and that's how thick it is. It's pretty epic. So not only is there a rondel, a double rondel, but it's a random rondel that's set up differently every single time you play it, and that super thick cardboard. So if you really like rondel games, I definitely recommend you check out Roundhouse. Sure, it's 2016, it's a little bit older, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game. In fact, it means it's significantly cheaper than getting the new game that came out this year. And of all the games that I played in 2016, this is the one that I still enjoy the most. In fact, I'm going to play this tomorrow. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video, guys. If you like this video, like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and get notified of our future videos. In fact, this is going to be an ongoing series. Next month, I'm going to do Best Games of 2017, November 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and then maybe Best Board Games from Asia of all time. Now, I just told you 10 games that I absolutely love, but I want to hear from you. Have you played any of these games? Comment below and let me know, and share your thoughts. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Does Yokohama have to be number 1? Comment below, let me know, and tell me how much you hate my opinion. Once again, guys, my name's Jay. I play Asian board games and share what I find with all of you. Thanks for watching.